The war god took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and keep it.
Hi Eden family, welcome to episode 5 of our budgeting series, which is called, our Christian budgeting series, which is called Deny Yourself. Today is going to be all about paying our debts off, maybe things that we should consider to really decide what order we should pay things off in. I mean, most of us probably have more than one account that, is in consideration. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Let's go ahead and jump into our opening scripture. So Romans 13, 7 through 8. Pay to all what is owed to them. Taxes to whom taxes are owed. Revenue to whom revenue is owed. Respect to whom respect is owed. Honor to whom honor is owed. Owe no one anything except to love each other, for the one who loves another has fulfilled the law. I'll toss it over to you.
I'll just tack on to I'll just start with the end there, because it says, give respect, everything due to that order of who is owed to. Don't owe anything. Talking about authority, we're talking about respect, also talking about money wise. Just owe everything, don't be in debt to anything. It says, but accept love. And this is consistent throughout the entire Bible, that love is the most important of everything, and is also consistent with the character of God. When it comes to God, his promises, there's conditions. Mm-hmm. The promises have conditions on it. Mm-hmm. If you do this, then I will do this. They have conditions except love. Love is unconditional. So the same thing for us, like he's saying here, stay up on all of those things, but love is something that you can never pay in full. So it's like a debt that you can never pay. So that's why it's always love. Love will forever be something that you would do, and you can never love enough. It's like, okay, I've loved enough in my life that I don't have to love no more. Mm-hmm. Love is something that you're gonna have to do for the rest of your life until, you're no longer here. So that's what I got from this. And like I said, just throughout the entire Bible, the way it emphasizes love and the importance of it. When Jesus walked, love, the most important thing, love. Paul write love. So that's what I got from that.
Wow, that's good. It's interesting how we're always on kind of different ends of it, which is great, right? Like, hey, that's why we're together.
Unscripted.
Yeah.
Where are you about to come from?
Well, I think just from the practical side, right? Pay to all what is owed to them. And then it even mentions like practical things like taxes, revenue. Mm-hmm. And then it kind of switches gears to non-money related things, respect and honor, right? And another scripture that kind of, I feel like that's very straightforward, but mm-hmm. the scripture that literally just came to mind like 5 seconds ago that kind of works together with this is, there's a scripture that says like basically do everything without grumbling, right? Mm-hmm. And so it came to mind, I think, because a lot of us, and including me, right, we're about to get ready to talk about paying debts off, and it can almost be, it's like a great thing, but you almost do it like begrudgingly because it's like, oh, like even if I have the $30,000, I don't want to really give it to you, right? Mm-hmm. But even this shows like the character of God, right? He's like, hey, do the right thing. Just do the right thing, right? Mm-hmm. No strings attached, no second thought, no anything. Just do the right thing. When it comes to money, right? Taxes and revenue, and when it doesn't, respect and honor, right? Do the right thing. That is the God that we serve. And so, that's the scripture that kind of came to mind. And I feel like it's straightforward. Pay what you owe. Stop. And I think from an even more practical sense, right? Like stop trying to maneuver your way out of paying what you owe. If you spent, and this comes to mind when you think about people, and it's okay, right? Like we're not we're not, again, everyone's circumstance is different. What it takes to kind of get to a healthy place financially may look different for everyone. But when you think about, you know, like settling debts, for example, right? So if you have a $5,000 credit card and they say, just give us $1,500, right? We know that that impacts your credit a little bit differently than like truly having paid everything that you actually owed, right? And so you think about the practical / natural ways that God's truth is like, it always goes forth. It's kind of the comment I made last time when I said, like the natural is literally just evidence of God, which is even when people don't want to acknowledge his existence, like this world in itself acknowledges his existence and the fact that he's a creator. It's just crazy. So yeah, it's practical, right? Pay what you owe. And I love the owe no one anything. Owe no one anything. You like, that's it. The only person we're in debt to, the only person we should be indebted to is God himself, right? Because we could never repay for what he did on the cross. But from there, pay what you owe. Like, owe no one anything. So yeah, that's it. All right, let's go ahead and jump into a quick recap. So I kind of have done this over the last few episodes just to make sure that we're keeping up with like where we are, right? So again, it won't be comfortable budgeting at a really high level. We talked about memberships and subscriptions, which is cutting things out. Let's get to the meat, right? Once we had the meat, which is really like the expenses that we can't get rid of, right? That are needed, prioritizing and rearranging, right? Like making every paycheck green. We talked about that. And then last time we also talked about personal allowance and savings. So now we're at a point where, okay, we've gone through building the entire budget. We've taken out what needed to be taken out. We're left with the meat. We have assigned ourselves a personal allowance, and our savings should now be just in motion, right? We said, hey, after all of these things are done, assigned, everything else goes to savings, non-negotiable, right? Like if it's $500, if it's $2, whatever it is, because everyone's circumstances are different, starting this off, it's going towards savings. So now we're at a place where we want to talk about, okay, we're going to set that, what is it called? The threshold, right? After emergency fund. Yes. So after that safety net amount of our savings, everything else is now going to be used to pay off debts, right? Until we get to a place where we owe no one anything, then it will truly become a savings, right? And then that's where people can get into investing, whatever else they choose to do, right? This is just the starting point. But the first thing we need to do is pay what we owe. One really quick call out. So debt payoff, just so that we're clear, right? So what is everything that we're talking about right now when we say, okay, if my safety net or my emergency fund. I don't know why safety net is like, it won't leave my mind. After I've defined that, like, hey, okay, I need to keep at least $1,000 in my account because that'll pay my expenses for 6 months. It's probably higher than that, whatever it is. Once we've defined that amount, everything after that is going to be used to pay off debts. And when we say debts, at least in this setting, we are also including cars, right? Even if you just got it last month, it's a debt. And we're also including mortgages, right? Because you've talked a lot about how people really just don't see that as something that you're supposed to pay off. It's really just a standard that, hey, if you have a home, you have a mortgage. It doesn't have to be that way. We consider that a debt. And that's going to be part of the list. Is there anything else that comes, and it's okay if not, is there anything else that comes to mind when we say debt that people don't usually associate with like trying to actually pay it off? I think cars, mortgages, anything else come to mind? What do you think?
No, I mean, I think that's the biggest. Credit cards can get out of hand, maybe to a point that you can think like, I can't pay that off. But the same thing with everything else. Like, no, we have to pay it off, and we just got to start a plan. And regardless of what the balance look like, and you just got to start digging. You got to start working, and eventually that balance will come down. But yeah, I can't think of anything else that would get extremely out of hand.
Student loans, actually, it just popped in my head. Especially if you got a higher ed degree, then so those can be like very, very expensive, very high. So, but again, put it on the list, right? Because we can, even if it's the last one, right? Yes, we can relate. So yes, that's one that we would still consider a debt, even if it's, you know, over $100,000, 2, 3, whatever it is, just like a house. We consider that a debt. We're gonna put a plan in place to pay that off as well.
Right.
Okay, so let's talk about, this is going to be a really quick, really, I think, just episode, because it's straightforward, and we're really just going to give you some of the things that you want to consider, but not necessarily what order, right? Because talk a little bit about why it would be a dangerous thing to take these items in the order that we give them versus like assessing your own situation, right? This is not a, hey, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? No, take these, apply it to your own situation, because it can vary, right? And I know you're really passionate about that.
No, I mean, real quick, it's just there's a bunch of different methods out there. Like I said, you got the snowball, you got the avalanche, you got the all these different things. But like we have always said, there is not a one size fit all type of thing. And again, even here, paying off debt, there is not a one size fit all. You like we did, you're gonna use a combination of multiple different things, because you got to do, and really the biggest thing is kind of, again, how I sit down with all the clients, even to ourselves, write out the different scenarios, and then you can see at the end of it which one is gonna put you in the best position at the end. And sometimes it might look like doing the highest interest. It might make sense there, but then there's other times where the higher payment, you know, higher interest with $1,000 balance versus higher payment with $400 a month. It, you know, so that's really what you have to do. And like I said, it just sometimes a combination. I think it's rare when it's one method can clear everything, or at the end of the day, it's all you're gonna get to the same goal at the end of the day. Now it's just a matter of either how fast, or, you know, another, if you don't mix these up, or if you have a situation where you don't pick the right one at the right time, it might add some more months, but yeah, ultimately you're gonna get there. But if you take each scenario and break it down, you can see like, okay, this can save me 2 months, or I can get to my goal 3 months faster, versus if I don't mix it and continue this one method, it could take me longer to do. So that's the only thing
It's like
that I
Tetris.
can think of.
All right, so some of the things that people would want to consider, and some of the ways that we even kind of played around with our accounts in terms of paying off debt. So one of the things we would want to consider are the interest rates. That's probably a really high one in terms of assessing, right? Because you talked about being able to save a little bit of money. And to your point, it could be 10, 15 there, here, whatever it is. But interest rates, really, if you even like credit cards, right? Like you think about credit cards, and it's not really well, I don't know what the statistics are, so let me not say it like that. It is a lot of people generally end up paying more in interest versus what they actually originally spent, right? So that's that system that you always talk about, that they're preying on the people that lack self-control. But interest rates are a huge one.
I would just say credit cards are 16 to 24%.
Like up there.
The average interest rate on a credit card.
Yep.
Yeah.
So interest rates is one of the things we would want to consider when saying, okay, I'm going to pay this versus this off first, right? Depending on how much you have available to use from your savings account. The total balance, right? So what do we mean? We mean what would lead you to maybe pay off something that's $500, let's just say an account that has $500 versus an account that's $13,000, right? Maybe that second one has a higher interest rate, but it's going to take you way longer to be able to get rid of that one. So hey, if we can knock the $500 out, just be done with it, move on. That's one way to assess it, right? Do you think that's really what drives this? We hear the snowball methodology a lot. Do you think that is what drives it the most, right? It's like attack the smallest, go smallest to biggest, I think. Something like that, right?
Yeah, because what you're going to do is once you knock that debt off, now that payment that you're using, just say if it was a credit card that you was paying $60 a month, now you're going to take that $60 and you're going to attack the next, which in the snowball also, I think we're going to also get to it later, but you're going to make minimum payments on everything else, and you're going to pick which debt to attack. And so like I said in the example, if it's $60, once you pay that off, you're now going to take that $60 on top of whatever the next debt that you're going to attack. And then that's what develops the snowball, because the more you knock off, the bigger each payment for the next debt is going to be. So
that makes sense. Okay. All right. So we have, so we said interest rates, the total balance on the account, how soon it can be paid off. And I think some of that works together, right? Because how soon it can be paid off, there's a lot of factors that go into that. One is exactly what we just said. What is that total balance? But also, how much are you putting into your savings account, right? And that looks very different for everyone. So even if it is a $13,000 balance, right? If it does have the highest interest rate, and if I do have the capacity to pay it off sooner than something that is $500, then that's where that would change, right? Because I can still get rid of the higher balance that has a higher interest rate given how much I'm putting into my savings account. So that one I think is really driven by how much money you have open or kind of throwing towards the savings account. Status of account, is it delinquent or not? Do you want to speak on this one? Because I feel like this is, to me at least, I think this is a big one, or I can speak on it, whatever you can speak. I was just going to say, so not to get too much into our story, but I think that whether an account is delinquent or not is huge, right? Because the way that I would like to put it is right now, right? We didn't have a budget. We have a budget now. This should be the worst it gets. And what I mean is if I changed my mind, right? I made up my mind and I'm making a lifestyle change. If I came into this situation with, let's just say 3 delinquent accounts that are maybe all in collections, and I have 3 other ones, right, that are on the verge. The goal here would be not to let those additional 3 go into collections, right? Because your credit is where it is right now, and that's a whole nother issue, right? Like, right. So we don't want to worsen the situation, right? And so if an account is not yet delinquent, that, for at least the way that we kind of do finances and help others, is we do what we can to not allow additional accounts to go delinquent, right? Again, it's okay. Like, I came into marriage with more than 1 delinquent account. Let's just be clear. We'll share that story in the next podcast. But the point is, like, okay, however many accounts you have delinquent, those matter. We are going to pay those off. But what is a little bit more urgent are the ones that are not yet delinquent. We want to not let those go into collections and make sure that your credit score doesn't get any worse. Do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say right now in this process, I wouldn't worry too much about your credit score. Because if you, being realistic, if you got stuff that's delinquent and all that, you more than likely have a bad credit score, 600, 500s, whatever. So, which even at that point, it's gonna be tough for you to, go get loans and all that anyway. So what we want to do here is, I like to say, stop the bleeding, which
reserve.
is, how can we stop those? Again, like something that's drawing a 24% interest rate. Let's stop the bleeding on that by getting that knocked off, or I think we're going to talk about it, possibly balance transfers or something. You want to stop the bleeding on it, because as you on the pursuit of getting out, you also don't want to have your work being, like, you want it to 100% go towards progression and not a payment with interest. You're gonna pay $100, but then if whatever the interest rate is, most of that payment is gonna go towards interest. So what you want to do is stop the bleeding and allow for whatever work you are doing towards getting it knocked off. Let it be 100% to knocking it off without continuing to put you further into a hole.
Right. Yep. So again, just to recap really there, and we are not saying that delinquent accounts don't matter. They do, and they are on the list to be paid off. But like he's saying, we want to stop the bleeding for things that are reoccurring hitting you, right? Like that interest that's hitting you monthly. And usually once an account is delinquent or in collection status, it's no longer doing that. Like, it's been sold to a company, now they're just trying to get a percentage of it. So they do matter. We are going to pay them, but typically that makes them a little bit less priority. They've already hit your credit. let's do something about the other stuff and not let it get further out of control. The next one you already brought up. So consider balance transfers. In full transparency, this is not something that was originally on our list, but it did get added to the list because this is actually one of the ways that we were able to stop kind of the bleeding, right? Again, we'll share more about this in the next episode, but his credit was a lot better than mine when we first got married. I also had a ton of debt, a ton. And one of the things that we did was he was able to basically balance transfer a lot of my accounts. So that did two things. One, we were able to start paying it, right? Because the balance transfer, and maybe you're better fit to talk about the balance transfers, but at least for us, right, it was like 0 interest for 12 to 24 months, depending on which account we're talking about. But what he was able to do was say, okay, hey, I have this account. Let's just say it was $5,000, one of the many, $5,000. He was able to open a new account that had 0 interest for at least 12 to 24 months, able to basically pay mine off, whether it was delinquent or not. And then basically the account then went over to you, right? And then we started paying on it over that time that it didn't have interest. But that was one of the, I would say, biggest tools that we used to be able to put us in a place that was like, all right, we can work towards something, starting off pretty early in our marriage. Okay. Last thing is that medical balances or items can go last. So just for people who don't know, we can probably put the link in the description, but there was a change or update that was made April 2023. So medical debt that has been paid is no longer included on credit reports. So that's huge, right? Because it means that it literally means just that if something does go into collections, if it's a debt, even if you hadn't paid it, once it is paid, it's just no longer on your credit report, right? And why does it take so long to improve? Like, your credit score can drop super duper fast, but the reason that it's so difficult to bring it back up is because even if you do what we did, where you basically bought out all of my accounts, which basically made my accounts just paid in full, right? What still hurts and what takes a long time to recover from is the payment history. So yes, I can see that you paid this account off. However, you had already missed 12 payments and it went to collections and sat there for X amount of time. So it's that historical piece that makes it extremely hard sometimes, or slow to recover from. But this really helps with that, right? Because even if I had a $15,000 bill that's medical, hospital bill, for example, it sat in collections for 2 years. If I go and pay that off today, it just goes away. Like, it's based on this update, it's just no longer on your report at all if it's paid in full. Were you gonna say something?
I was just gonna say a correction to, like, when things are paid off from, like, collections, or what happens is when you get hit or when you get reported, there is I guess they keep it like a current status, and that hit will stay on there for 12 months. So that's mainly what is going to impact you the most, is once you're reported, and then when you do pay it off, even after you pay it off, you're still going to get the repercussions of that hit for 12 months, and then it moves to like a long-term installment. I think it's like, we'll have to look it up, I think it's like 5 or 7 years or something like that. So it stays, it just moves from like a critical to a long-term type thing, so it's not going to impact you as much. But that's why it takes so much longer, because that hit stays with you way longer, and it takes way longer for that to come off even after you have paid it off.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so and we'll try to put something up.
Okay. So again, medical debt that has been paid off is no longer included on credit reports. That was the first change that went into effect April 2023. The second one was that medical debt that totals less than $500 is no longer included on credit reports. So, this really could be great depending on everyone's situation, but let's just get back to our scripture. We still don't want to owe anyone anything, right? So this is not a way to promote not paying your medical bills, but all we are saying is, from a practical standpoint, the priority is a little bit lower, right? Because you have a little bit more time, and that historical piece of it on your credit report, we don't have to actually worry about that, whereas all other accounts you do.
Credit cards are going to do more damage than that medical bill.
It's basically
Loans
exactly
are going
right.
to do more damage than that medical bill. So, like I said, we're eventually going to get to it. It's just not going to be
First.
one or two
Yep.
on the list.
Yes. All right. So quick recap. Interest rates, right? These are ways we assess what we pay in what order. Interest rate, the total balance, how soon it can be paid off, is the status delinquent or not, what is the status of the account, consider balance transfers, and then we said medical debts can go last. Other considerations, and I think we basically already said this, right? One is, these are like goals, right? Don't allow any additional accounts to go delinquent. That's one thing that we would want to avoid within this process, and one of the goals that we're trying to achieve. And then you already said the other one, which is you're making at least minimum payments on all accounts. So while we might be prioritizing X account because after looking at all of these things, it just makes sense to pay it off first, we're still maintaining the rest of the accounts, right? There's no like, okay, well, I'm going to stop paying this or whatever it is. So yes, use all extra money, but not at the expense of any other accounts being unpaid. Just as closing statements, right? One of the things that I wanted to highlight was to be patient, right? Because it can take time. And even when we think about us, right? Why am I saying that? Because it can take time depending on how much debt you have right now. And yours might look different. It might be all student loans. It might be maybe you bought a house at some point that you really truly couldn't afford, that sort of thing. It doesn't matter. Be patient with this process. It will work, and just trust the process, right? Like, know that God is with you. He is going to see you through the discipline, through all the hard work, and you're going to see the wins, and the small wins are going to turn into bigger wins. And then you're going to look back and just be grateful for the day that you started. The second thing is, do not, and this is really for people like me, do not get emotionally attached to your savings account. What do I mean? Oh my goodness. So I mean, the first thing we ever saved for was our house, and I forget, but I know we saved like the $40,000, and I don't remember how much of it we gave for the house, but I just remember feeling like, geez, like we worked for that for a year. You saw the account building up, and then it's like, boom, it's a payoff, or, you know, you're using it for X thing, and kind of just, you don't start back at zero, but you start back a lot lower, right? But there's something freeing about not being emotionally tied to it. You know that it's just a working, right? So it's like you build it up, all right, pay that off, start again, build it up, pay that off, start again. And you get to a point where I really believe that God even uses that to put money in its right place in your life, right? You don't idolize it. It's not your sense of security. And hey, at the end of the day, if that's who you are now, there's going to come a time where you haven't, and you don't have to dish it out, right? Like right now, we're just in that working process of correcting all the mistakes that we made, right? And last one is no more debts moving forward. Whatever you do through this process, and again, everyone's situation is different. We always like to say that because we don't know, where you are in life right now. But the goal would be that, hey, as we're working towards paying these debts off, as we're working towards being disciplined with our budget, we're not adding any other debts to that if we can.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say, like, some things happen. Again, life happens, and you might car wreck or something, and you have to go get a car note. But now with these tools and knowing how aggressive are, with these things now at least you know how to attack it. So yeah, we on the face we would try to stay away from debt, but again, there may be cases that you have no other choice but to, I have to go get this. But again, knowing I'm gonna go get it. But again, put yourself with the budget, and you should know how fast or how long it'll take you to pay off whatever debt you go get. And again, be aggressive, stick with it, and just know this is a temporary thing. I'm gonna go get this car, but I'm gonna pay it off for 2 years or whatever it is that you have to get. Know the amount, know how much. Again, with your budget, you see the path, you know how much is going to savings, you know how much you can save in a course of a year, 2 years, or whatever. So you should see the imbalance of whatever you just went and got, and just know in 15 months I can have $15,000 or whatever remaining on whatever debt that you did go get. So put yourself, challenge yourself and put yourself on a goal of, I got a $15,000 car loan. It's gonna take me 15 months, whatever. This car is gonna be gone, or I'm gonna own this car. I'm gonna have the title in 16 months. So
I was just gonna say, if it's an absolute necessity, right? Because that's just going back to our very first podcast. It's that mentality change and making up your mind, right? So yes, to your point, if you literally don't have a way to get to work because maybe you're whatever, right? Extras happen. Yes, it makes sense that, you know what, I do have to go get a car. And if you don't have the money to buy it outright or what have you, then yes, that's another debt you would have to acquire. But if it's just like, tired of driving my, whatever year, whatever, and it's still running, right? So again, don't give in to those worldly temptations that have you thinking that, oh, it's normal to have a car payment. Oh, it's normal to have this. Like, no, we've talked through that, but I just want to make sure we don't lose sight of that. But you're absolutely right. Everyone's situation is different. But that's all we got.
Yeah.
We'll have to see if folks tune in to hear about my craziness. 22,000.